Hello everyone, welcome back. This is Engineer Hussein Mosapi. So in this video, we'll be looking at what are called interests. Alright, so before we begin, do not forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Alright, let's get to it. So when it comes to interest, the first thing that one has to understand are the terminologies that are associated with it. So now, what are these terms that are used? Now, the first term we need to understand is called the principal amount, which is denoted with a capital P. Now, the principal amount is basically the amount of money that is initially borrowed from the bank or invested. Then the second term to know is the rate of interest, which is denoted with a capital R. This is the rate of interest at which the principal amount is given to someone for a certain period or duration rather. Then we have time, which is basically the duration. So by definition, it is the duration for which the principal amount is given to someone. Then lastly, the term that we have is accrued amount. Now this is the principal amount plus the interest amount the person returns to the bank. So it's basically like the sum of the interest plus the principal amount. Alright, now that we understand the terminologies that are used, we now have to look at a type of interest that is basically practiced. And this type is called simple interest. Now, what is simple interest? Now, simple interest is basically the method used to calculate the amount of interest charged on the principal amount at a given rate for a given period of time. With that said, you need to understand that simple interest, which could be denoted either by using SI or just basically I. Simple interest is equal to P times R times T, which is practically just PRT. Now we need to understand that in this case, where SI, or rather just I, is the interest, which is basically the simple interest, then P is equivalent to what is known as the principal amount, which is the amount invested or borrowed from the bank. Then we have R, which is basically the rate of the interest, that is. So you can just say rate, or rather we could say that the annual interest rate, which is basically the best term to use. Annual interest rate. Now, one thing you should know is that when it comes to the interest rate, it's mostly given as a percentage. So this is mostly given as percent. So to give you, let's say, to say that the annual interest or the interest rate is basically like 4%, 7%, and the like. But what you have to understand is that you have to use it as a decimal. So given as percent, but use as decimal. Now, what I mean by use as decimal, you can always convert it by saying percentage given divided by what? 100%. And you get your decimal value. Then basically, we now also have what is called the time. The time is basically just the duration, which is mostly given in years. So it could be years, depending on the type of questions that you are being phrased with. So this is basically how you go about understanding simple interest. Now, one thing you should know under simple interest is this. The interest you earn is never added to the bank. Because this is how it works. It's like you have the interest earned, but the interest earned will never be added back to the principal amount invested. Be mindful about that. through a bank, that is. All right, with that said, let's understand how we can apply the knowledge we've acquired with examples. The first example says, Mr. Mosapi saves 10,000 in a savings account at an annual rate of 5% for 1 year. And the first question is asking us to say, how much money has he earned? Then again, another question says, how much money in total will we have in his savings account? All right, let's solve this. So, solutions. Let's start with the first one. Now, when they say, how much money has he earned? Be mindful. Every time you're solving questions, the answer is always in the question. So, understand the problem given. Mr. Mosapi saves 10,000. So that's the amount of money saved. So we can just put up some data. So he saves 10,000. Now what is the amount of money saved? What is the amount of money invested? That is called the principal amount. So P is equivalent to 10,000. Then the question also says that an annual rate, so being given the rate of interest, the annual rate of interest. So R is giving us 5%. But we need this as a decimal, so it's a 5% divided by 100%. And this will give us practically 0.05 as a decimal. Okay, I need to put that decimal point at the end. Yeah. And then we've been told this for 1 year, so we now have the duration. So the time is 1 year. So now, what do we need? How much money has he earned? What is the interest? So we're looking for the simple interest. Now, simple interest is equivalent to PRT. With the data collected, we can plug and chug. So simple interest is equal to the principal amount, which is 10,000, the rate as a decimal, 0.05, times the duration, which is basically 1 year. So simple interest is equal to an amount, which will be basically, if you compute that, you get 500 kwacha. So this is basically how much money he earned. Now the second question is telling us to say, how much money in total will we have in a savings account? When we talk about the total amount of money, we're talking about the accrued amount. So we're looking for the accrued amount. That's what we're looking for. So now accrued amount, which is A, is equal to simple interest plus principal amount. So accrued amount is equal to the simple interest, which is 500 kwacha, plus the principal amount, which is 10,000 kwacha. So the accrued amount, therefore, will just be 10,500 kwacha. That's how you go about solving this problem. Now in problem number 2, it reads to say, if Patricia and the builders team invests 8,000 kwacha into an account paying annual interest rate of 10.5%, how many years will it take them to earn 3,000 in interest? All right, let's solve this. So let's get the key things we have in this question. What are the key things? Now, we've been told that Patricia and the builders team are investing 8,000. So in our data, we can understand to say that the principal amount is K8,000. And then the interest rate is basically 10.5%, which should be converted as a decimal. So 10.5 divided by 100, percent, you get the percent and the percent cancelling out. So we end up having 0.105. So that is like the rate. And then what else have we been told? the question says how many years, so we want the duration. So time we don't know, so we don't know, it's a question mark for it. All right, so how many years we take them to earn 3,000 in interest? So the simple interest has been given. Simple interest is about 3,000 kwacha. Now we know that simple interest is equal to PRT. Therefore, with the interest in mind, we can try and plug and chug and see which variable will be missing. So the simple interest, which is 3,000, being equal to the principal amount, which is 8,000, times the rate, which is 0.105. Then the duration we don't know. So let's just put it as T. So if we make T the subject of the formula, we'll be having 3,000 being equivalent to, if you say 8,000 times 0.105, you get 840 T. Now most of us prefer seeing the equation like this. There's no difference. You can always flip it. So by solving for T, I have to divide both ends by 840. By doing so, I end up having T being equal to 3.571428,571. So now, how many years would this be? Therefore, we'll say that T is equal to, try and guess a number. Are we going to put 3 or 4? Now, according to the rounding off rules, if the number that is after the decimal point, if at all we have to round off to a whole number, because we need years, is equivalent to 5 or greater than 5, we have to get one value and put it to the first number. So we're going to end up having 4 years. Because in reality, if we put this computation in practice, this is like 3 years, 5 months, 7 weeks. Could be quite an ambiguous inspection, but it could make so much sense. 3 years, 5 months, and 7 could be something like that, something roughly like that, but we can always just round it off to like, oh yeah, so it's like 4 years. All right, so I hope it's clear. I hope you have understood. I know at first glance, most of the questions in math might look a bit handful, but with a little bit of practice, a little bit of going through and trying to understand terminologies, you get a hang of it. And basically, for most people, online lessons, what you have to understand is based on discipline. Just discipline yourself and you get it right. All right, so if you have any queries, you can always reach me out on WhatsApp on the line 077 149 5252. Remember, slow progress is better than no progress. And let's strategize before becoming a statistic. Let's try and push for that A+.